All right, how are we doing today? Several months back in the fall of 24, I wrote a thread about primarily American Cur Dogs, but it's also on sort of the theory of what was going on when the Colonials, when the settlers came over here, started building this nation. What was it they were trying to achieve? And does that have any impact on what we're doing now as we start trying to potentially build homesteads, start first generation farms at this point, or continue on with small plots and different actions that are going forth as we move into this next generation. All right, so we'll start out. Truly American breeds of livestock, dogs, and horses are easily overlooked when moving to the country. Well-developed regional characteristics often give way to "aren't Highlanders so cute?" So the problem here, as we're starting, isn't the Highlander. It's that you're going in with this idea that I'm going to raise Highlanders. Well, why are you going to raise Highlanders? Why are Highlanders the best fit for your homestead and for your property, for the region you're in? That's what I really want people to get thinking about when they're talking about dog breeds, when they're talking about their livestock breeds, so on. We have generations here in the U.S. that have proven some stock works better here and some stock works better here. All right. A man has to raise what he wants, and I think the American breeds routinely offer more of what small property owners want, even if they don't realize it. That portion about a man has to raise what he wants, that's key. You do have to raise what you want, but you have to know why you want that. What are you trying to achieve? Don't go reinventing the wheel. It's a great way to lose a bunch of money and get pissed off and fed up with the whole homesteading idea. All right, to get to this way of thinking, that is the colonial, the settler mindset, you have to remember what the colonies were achieving. These were small communities of limited resources. Men, let alone animals, could rarely specialize in one area. The same horse might be expected to pull a wagon, carry a rider relatively quickly, and plow a bit, all in the same day. These were well-muscled and tight-bodied crosses. What you see, too, is that nothing I listed in there says that I am a specialist, I am the biggest horse, I am the fastest horse. Frankly, especially with the English colonials, there wasn't a whole lot of horses working the ground. There was a whole lot of oxen, but your horses were primarily transportation. And so that transportation doesn't have to be the fastest, but certainly can't be the biggest either. If you're taking a big 20-hand Shire, which is only a slight exaggeration, that's going to be a generally slower animal. It's going to take more water. It's going to be harder on the animal. It's certainly harder just to climb up on it. And you just got to get the job done. You got to take the wagon. You got to move your grain. You got to move supplies. You got to get the missus and the kids to church. You don't need a giant animal. And that's really a run through, and you'll see here as we get into the dogs. Look at the difference between the English Bulldog and the American Bulldog. I could bitch about the quality of the American Bulldogs today, but the breeds are still markedly different. The frontier was no place for a heavy horse, a heavy dog, or heavy cattle. Utility was the game. And so whether we're talking about cracker cattle and the Longhorn, the Spanish varieties primarily, and how much smaller they're going to be than the Angus and the Herefords as those guys start getting built up, you really want something that could go out and graze, that could take care of itself. You want a horse that's not going to be eating 3 bales of hay a day through the winter. Yes, a lot of your German heavy horses, they're going to have a slower metabolism, and they're not going to be eating as much as you would think from their size, but it's still just too much. It's not totally functional. Now we jump into the dog breeds. Among dogs, the peak of these frontier breeds are found in the cur category. These are not to be confused with common curs, that is mutts. No, these dogs have closed books, that is breed books, and they're proper breeds as of the 20th century. So within that idea of breeds having closed books, knowing where the dogs came from, or at least the foundational dogs that we said, now we have a codified breed, they have that. These curs have it. They're not mutts, but they're curs that I'll dig into in a minute. The cur designation signifies the lore of their origins. The origin of the various cur breeds rests in the stories from the holler and from family genealogies. What I'm saying here is that a lot of these dogs are coming from Appalachia. They're coming from the South. Only the dogs that were valuable to the mountain men and stock handlers that forged the South were kept. Appalachia, Cracker Country, the bogs and cutbacks are where they come from. All of these dogs here on this picture, they all have an unknown history to some degree in their forming stage, in their conception, and at the very base, it's a little bit of, well, I think he came from here, and I think he came from here, and then I know Johnson had these dogs, and so that's the cur. But they're codified. They're breeds. You are at a point now where you're going to get the characteristics you want out of the particular breeds you're getting into. So, blackmouth cur, probably the most popular, but that's because I get a little bit iffy about the Catahoulas. I don't know that I would throw them in here. It's getting pedantic. And you'll find out when you get into cur dogs, there's a lot of people being very pedantic and very passionate. Blackmouth cur, that's primarily Texas. Mountain curs, you're coming out of Appalachia. Catahoula, you got Louisiana area. Stevens is Florida. Blue Lacy's, again, that's Texas. There's a Florida cur. I'm not super familiar with it because, again, a lot of what's coming out of Florida that I'm aware of is going to be more Stevens. The leopard cur gets funny because this is John Wick. This is not the character. This is John Wick the Houndsman. And he's doing stuff in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. There gets to be overlap with the leopard curs, the leopard hounds, how you want to define this. And so it gets a little bit sticky in there. But there is definitely old line leopard curs. I've hunted with them before. I didn't own them. There was another fellow I was hunting with. Your treeing cur is a little bit of a misnomer in that it's going to be a hound, usually a treeing walker, and they're going to cross it with a mountain cur. And that's usually what your treeing cur is going to be. You can have some overlap between folks mix, and maybe they're going to end up doing a Kimmer. Maybe they're going to do a blackmouth, and they're going to cross it with a blue tick or something. Most folks aren't going to call that a treeing cur. Most folks are going to depend on walkers, but it happens. Tennessee treeing brindle, I'm not super familiar with. I half wonder if that's got some issues going on with the plot hounds, but I could be totally off on that. Kimmer stock, good dogs. There's nothing wrong with them. They're mountain curs by another name. There's a lot of politics, and they've got some heavier traits in different areas than the mountain cur. They're mountain curs. Canadian cur, not super familiar with. And then the Louisiana Catahoula leopard dog. It's a bit redundant if you ask me between the Catahoula cur and the Catahoula leopard dog. That also jumps into what's going on with the leopard curs. Pick your poison, take sides if you want. But if you're just getting into this game and looking at American dogs, I wouldn't necessarily worry about separating between all the leopards. Regional geographies and industries are witnessed when comparing the size and vocational strengths of, for example, the mountain and the blackmouth. The former favors hunting, but can work stock. The blackmouth is the opposite. Mountain curs come from Appalachia, blackmouths come from Texas. The blackmouth cur is really going to be your cattle dog. When we talk about herding in the States, this is not a European or specifically a United Kingdom idea of herding, where you've got your border collie and you're getting the sheep from point A to point B and they're all gathered. No, this is sending out heavier dogs, still lithe and nimble enough to be getting around, but you're sending out heavier dogs than a border collie, and they are driving cattle. They will windmill. They'll drove, they'll get them bunched up, and they will push cattle. And then when you're herding cattle with these guys, you've got a dog that almost sits in between a border collie and an actual catch dog that you would use in hunting. He's sort of sitting in between there, and he's going to get in there on that separate piece of beef, whether it's the bull, the cow, whatever, and he's going to rile them up till they decide that the best part of their life is going to be found by jumping back into that herd. So with the blackmouth, he has that increased side to work the stock that way. The mountain cur has a focus on hunting, primarily varmint hunting, a lot of squirrel, and then potentially doing coons and possum out of, not because you actually want the possum, but out of necessity, just get them off your property, whatever. A lot of guys will run bobcats with these guys as well. All right, there's a unifying line among cur dogs, though, that make them valuable for any homestead. Tractability. Cur dogs are not particularly smart, but they aim to please. Imagine a grittier border collie that is a one-owner dog. This means their leader could teach them, well, just about anything. Baying hogs might come naturally, but you can absolutely have an obedience competitor. The only fault, actually, before we jump into the only fault, let me take that and dig into that some. I have owned, and Lord willing will continue to own, a stupid amount of dogs. I've got 5 dogs on my property right now, and then had a bunch of others. And there's been a big variety, and I've sort of whittled out different regions of the world that I like their dogs, and different things that I'm finding in the dogs that I appreciate. The curs aren't stupid, but they're not border collies. They're not poodles. They're not smart dogs. What they are is humble and willing to listen and willing to be trained to probably the best level I have ever interacted with any dogs. Border collies are good, but border collies are a little bit spastic, and they almost need to be trained because they want to be trained. They gotta have an understanding of what's going on. On the other hand, you'll have some dogs that they need to be trained because they are so built on instinct that if you don't train them and don't continue to keep up on them, you're going to have a lousy experience. That's been the hounds I've messed with. The blue ticks, the English. These hounds, they have to hunt. The curs sit in between there in that the curs want you to appreciate working with them. It's not the almost neurotic, do you see me, that you're going to get out of a border collie. But it's also not the... Aloof is kind of a funny word in that you could apply that to your Shibas and some other interesting dogs. But it's not that hounds are aloof. It's that hounds are hunting for themselves. And that cur is hunting for you. That cur is moving cattle for you. That cur wants to be involved. Not in the do you see me, like a border collie, but in the, hey, we've got a job to do. Let's get it moving. And it makes sense. These are coming out of the mountains. They're coming out of small holdings, and they have to be able to jump in and work. Have enough brains to understand what's going on, but have enough tractability to be called off instantly. The best... See, every word I pick is a little bit off. If I say the most fun dog to train, if I say the best dog to train, it's all, they've got a unique personality. They, maybe Rottweilers are a little bit close to what I'm trying to say. That might work. I've only worked with one Rott, but that was a relatively similar experience. I would say the curs are a little bit smarter than Rotts in my experience. But it's a pretty limited experience. So that's sort of what's going on with curs. I can't talk these dogs up enough. They are, for the right person, they are just an unbelievable dog, especially for small homesteads, things like that here in the States. Okay. So the only fault of the cur dog is that they are one owner working dogs. This is necessary in the Blue Ridge foothills or in the plains. It doesn't work in suburbia. This is an issue. This isn't to say that cur dogs can't be good family dogs or that they're going to be untrustworthy with other people. No, it's what it is that if you train that dog and you're that dog's partner, that it's not even so much a master and dog relationship as much as these dogs get in your head and you get in their head and you are working towards a goal. When you're gone, there's a chance, a likelihood that your girlfriend, your wife, your brother, whoever is there routinely, that they're going to be able to take hold of them and get them to do 80, maybe even 100% of the work sometimes. But as soon as you enter that field, as soon as you enter that room, that house, as soon as your presence is there, everybody else can piss off. They don't care. My mountain cur, I had him, and if I was in the room, if I was in the field and people told him to do something that they knew he was capable of doing, and I was there, he'd look at me. He hears what they're saying. He's aware. But he wants to know if I'm telling him that, yeah, this is the mission we're on. This is the work we're doing. Fantastic dogs. If that works in your situation. I wouldn't say that they are necessarily a super strong suburban dog. They have to know that they're involved in whatever mission you are trying to achieve. And so if that's bike riding, if that is obedience, if that is something, sure, go for it. Keep them busy, keep them involved. But if you just want a pet that could go out there, lay out with the kids, just have fun, not be needy, not be interested in looking to jump in and accomplish things and work, don't get a cur dog. Don't get a cur dog. All right. Let's see. Don't dismiss the American dog. He's full of the same piss and vinegar that settled the New World. He's a hard worker and loyal to a fault. Till next time, maybe next time I'll write about cracker cattle, Rocky Mountain horses. I have not written about either of those. I have written about sheep, but I might very well be streaming about horses here soon. I think the big thing in all of this, besides me talking up cur dogs and just saying, man, these dogs are good, is there is a mindset that colonials and settlers had that you have to be able to get into, or you're not going to appreciate these dogs and what was being accomplished with them. Again, these aren't specialists. These are generalists that are high utility, high functioning in a variety of environments. And if you want to plug in and say, damn, I want to do some coon hunting and I want to have a dog that will join me, that will listen, that is easily trained, and that can keep up. Look at these American dogs. If you are doing the homestead thing, look at these dogs. If you are doing the livestock guardian thing, don't look at these dogs. Right? You have to go to the strength of the dog. You have to take what they were bred for, what the intention was, and you have to know that that works in your situation. Well, I guess to some degree I'm beating a dead horse, but man, if you want to hear me go spastic and autistic on something, jump into horses, jump into dogs, and we'll go all night. I love cur dogs. If you want to talk about them, get a hold of me. If you just want to talk dogs or horses, shoot, we'll do a stream about it one night. I don't care. But you find me at Wander Mr. Panda there on X. Y'all have a good one. One day I'll make it quicker to get off. I actually know what I'm doing.